Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining our Thursday night coach chat via if you're live watching this real time, or if you're actually just watching a replay. Thank you for joining us. I do want to say tonight's lecture is going to be mostly on consistency, but there's so much that deals with consistency of training that we're going to expand on that was not really in the newsletter. You can't really describe that much in, 200 to 300 words in a newsletter. So I want to start with this idea and then I'm going to expand on it. Is our schedule the best schedule that we could possibly have? And the answer right there in front of you is no, it's not. Well, then what is it about our schedule or a schedule that could be better than what we have? Obviously, schedules can be worse, but what can make it better? Well, basically, you have to understand a couple of concepts of what goes into a really good schedule. Yes, consistency is important. So if you miss 2 days in a row, you're going to be losing like 1%. If you miss one day, so you work out, you miss one day, and then you work out again, you basically lost nothing. Got it? But if you miss 2 days, like I said, you'll only lose like 1%. 3 days, then it goes up and up and up. After a week, we're talking about levels of general fitness. Okay. So after about a week, you can lose almost as much as 10% general fitness. Mostly what that amounts to is speed. Got it. So we just had a question, what do I do if I have to take a week off because I'm going to be out of town? Well, you'd lose some fitness. If there is any way that you could do every other day, even as little as 30 minutes every other day, that would maintain where you're at now. You would not be building because this is a build week, but you would maintain. So that's a plus. Instead of dropping and losing, you'd be maintaining. All right. So, what is it that we're actually training for? What is it that this consistency is all about? So, I'm going to be kind of jumping around in slides, which I'm going to do right now. And basically, we are training our resources. The system is called energy resource training. That's what we do. We do have different phases or periods of training, which we call periodization schedules. Um, but in general, we're training in those periodization schedules where we do a little more and a little more and a little less and build and taper and build and taper and on, which I'll show you, which I won't be showing you in a minute. But we've talked about in the past quite often. Um, there are really two energy resources that we're training. The first one is fat, and the second one is carbohydrate. Carbohydrate to go into your bloodstream. Your bloodstream as blood glucose or blood sugar, same thing. And blood glucose, blood sugar turns into glycogen as it resides right in your muscle in this kind of white honey-like substance, which actually, to be truthful, is what makes meat taste good, is basically, again, with everything else, it's sugar that makes everything taste good, sort of. That's what glycogen is these little tiny microscopic pools of white honey-like, basically sugar. Um, that's what your body utilizes. Now, let's go back. By the way, creatine phosphate is what sprinters use for ATP. The fuel that you use, we've discussed that, lectures ago. Adenosine triphosphate, three phosphate molecules bonded together, where one of them breaks away from the other two. An electron is fired out. So basically, you're generating an explosion with this fuel that your body uses to move. And that explosion kind of releases this ratchet system that is enveloped in your muscles releasing the muscle, enabling you to move forward, and on, very complex system. We've also discussed in lectures previously, so I won't go into that again, not here. But creatine phosphate is for sprinters only. You only have 7 seconds or so before you run out of it. This is like near 100% of your maximum ability, what we'd call your HR max, your maximum heart rate. Beyond, you do have limiters, you have governors in your brain, subconscious brain. When you come close to a maximum heart rate, an HR max, your brain will start, your subconscious mind will start to shut you down. You'll find that either you're lightheaded or just slowing down. You might even be a little dizzy, but your body will start to slow you down. You have governors that limit your heart rate from going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Your subconscious will safeguard you in that way, and many other ways, which we've also kind of just touched on in previous lectures. But fat and glycogen go through the Krebs cycle and create ATP, and so does creatine phosphate. But like I said, we're not sprinters. 7 seconds is not going to get you very far on a marathon unless you're trying to beat somebody like Eliud Kipchoge, who's the fastest marathoner right now in recorded history, who's alive, and beat him to the finish line. And then you're all out sprinting to the finish line, and you might be using creatine phosphate to get there if your legs are strong enough to carry you that fast that you can, in fact, sprint. Um, Creatine phosphate is the lactic system, meaning you don't generate lactic acid. You're going so fast, you do not generate lactic acid, where fat and glycogen do generate lactic acid. You should understand hydrogen, which I just read is the most prevalent element in the universe is hydrogen, which is not really a good thing for life forms because hydrogen bonds with other molecules and becomes acid. So lactic acid loses its hydrogen molecule. They make it 1 to 1. I've talked about this before. 1 to 1 ratio, one lactate molecule for one hydrogen molecule. The hydrogen molecule goes off and bonds with other things. That's where you get that kind of burning sensation in your legs. If you're running up really hard, up a bunch of stairs, your legs start feeling that burning sensation. That's that hydrogen molecule bonding with other molecules to create acid. At any rate, you really didn't need to know that hydrogen is the most prevalent element in our universe. I don't think it is on Earth, but in general in the universe. I read an article the other day. Anyway, who cares? So fat is a far more abundant resource for fuel for ATP than glycogen. We're going to talk about that in a sec. And at any rate, so it's really not about distance at all. It's not about mileage. On your schedules on Saturday, it does have miles and it does have time. Excuse me, miles are below time. Where you don't do both because essentially they're about the same. What I did was I took miles because people like to know what mileage it is, that they're doing on a long run, especially. You'll note everything else is by time, but the miles on a Saturday, really, it's just because it's cool. Because oh, this Saturday, you're doing either 11 miles or 13 miles, or Sunday, you'll be doing the same thing. We flip our Balboa Park flips the Saturday and Sunday workouts. So Sunday in Balboa Park, they do the same thing we do Saturday on the schedule, 11 or 13 miles this week. And that's kind of cool to know. But the number above that says time is basically taking your miles, multiplying it by a median of the middle of your easy pace range, because we needed one number to multiply it by. So 11 times whatever that median pace is equals the amount of time that shows on your schedule for 11 miles. If in fact you're looking at one of my schedules. Online, I don't know that they have the times. I think they just put in the distance. I may be wrong about that. I don't look at the online schedules that much. I look at mine and they transfer mine to those schedules to make them look pretty and less confusing. At any rate, there you have it. So it's really not about distance. It really, even though that's what's on the schedule, just because it's cool, it's really about time spent at these different utilizing different resources for fuel. Now, how do heart rate zones fit into different resources for fuel? Well, once again, I've showed you this one and I'll look at it really, whoops, went a little too far. We'll look at it really quick again. Aerobic zone is really your fat burning zone. The middle to low end is really more easy pace. The high end would be like marathon race pace or really high end or low LT, might be half marathon race pace. If you're in LT, lactate threshold zone, that yellow zone, then you only have about 80 to 90 minutes, that 80 to 90-minute window that your heart rate goes into that lactate threshold zone before you run out of glycogen. So you're now not only you're still using some fat, you're still using more. You're now fat consumption has gone down, but you're still using fat. Glycogen consumption has gone up. You're using a lot of glycogen. You have about 80 to 90 minutes before your crash, burn, hit the wall, whatever you want to call it. You're walking. And I don't mean walking, power walking like our power walkers do. I mean slower than our walkers do. You're burned out. AT, anaerobic threshold, is where you're no longer using oxygen. You need oxygen as a cat to metabolize fat. So you're no longer using any fat, no fat, none whatsoever at anaerobic threshold. Anaerobic without oxygen, aerobic with oxygen. And with oxygen, you're using a lot of fat. Without oxygen, you're using no fat whatsoever. So that's when your heart rate gets really up there. You're no longer using fat. So that's enough of that one. So consistency, in order to get distance, what we call endurance, you're going to need to use way more fat. So you're going to need to train because it's so much more important to this endeavor. Forget creatine phosphate. We don't care about 7 second sprinting. We don't do that. That's not a marathon. We care about a lot of consumption of fat as a resource for ATP because that's our greatest resource. So where do we want to train most of our heart rate? Well, where is the greatest volume of resource to get us to that finish line? The same answer is aerobic threshold, low heart rate. So why don't we do marathon race pace? Well, two reasons. You're still aerobic, but you don't need to go faster. If you go marathon race pace, the faster you go, the greater the risk of injury. So if you get the same endurance training from aerobic work, why would you want to increase your pace and go faster to risk injury? That makes no sense. But then midweek, and this applies to all athletes, walkers, run walkers, and runners. Midweek, you really want to get your heart rate up there so that the threshold, these thresholds here, your lactate threshold, your aerobic conditioning, and your anaerobic threshold, all three of these thresholds, really kind of four of them, they go higher, right? So you can go faster and still utilize fat, which means you're going faster, farther because you have a greater reservoir of fat. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Good. I hear you all saying, yes, I'm psychic. All right, maybe not. Anyway, so let's go back. Good. So it's not about distance at all. It really is about time in different heart rate zones to utilize for us marathoners, fat and then high heart rate glycogen, which is the form of comes in a form of carbohydrate, the sugar basically. Got it? Okay. So, so by the way, sugar is not the evil thing that we all profess it to be. You do need to create sugar. I mean, carbohydrates in the form of pasta turn into glycogen, meaning sugar. It all turns into sugar. Got it? The problem with sugar is that in a sedentary society, unlike our community, sugar at the end of the day, if you don't use it, turns into fat. Pardon me. And fat, that's just putting on more and more and more and more and more fat. That's where we get into trouble. That's where carbohydrates get the bad name. But we do need sugar. We do need, in healthy forms, not in unhealthy forms that utilize unhealthy forms of fat, like pick one, cookies, cake, pizza, all highly addictive forms, ice cream, all of the highest addictive forms of foods. Do yourself an interesting favor. Go on Google, type in the little search bar, what is the most addictive foods? What are the most addictive foods? Go ahead and every one of them, the 5 most addictive foods, the 10 most addictive foods, the 20 most addictive foods, the 15 most addictive foods, all of them, I found, I did this, all have one food in common as number one. And you may not expect that food, but it is the number one most addictive food. And probably best to avoid because it's just like, lots of grease and whatever. Um, all right. Anyway, enough of that. Pardon my sideline, but go ahead and look that up. I think you'll find it interesting. Um, so consistency and volume, not time. That's the key. Now, how do our schedules differ from pro schedules? What is it that they are doing? And really, that I'm almost done with all of this. Whoops, I just went by it. What is it that they're doing that most of us are not doing? Well, I actually created that's a schedule that's not online. That's for our group 0 and for our group 1A. These are the 3 hour and 3:10 marathon finish time groups. And also group 3, excuse me, 1B, pardon me, can use this same schedule. The paces that you're looking at on the left column in red here, pardon me, uh, are slower for group 1A and 1B. This is group 0, obviously. Pardon me. Anyway, you will note, I'm hiccuping. I don't know why. You will note, the total miles are 82, roughly 82 and a half miles. And our level 1 schedule peaks, I want to say at about 32, 35 miles, depending on the group and pace that you're in for the level 1 schedule. Those are primarily walk only groups, depending. There are others that use the level 1 schedule, pardon me, because it has less risk of injury, less intensity, less speed work. But at any rate, a pro athlete, this would be for our 3 hour, 3:10 group, roughly 82 and a half miles is what you're looking at. This would be at peak week. You can see peak week down here. They are actually doing 85% low heart rate, fat consuming fat resource training heart rate zone, 85%, and 15% anaerobic. 85% we would call also zone two, or easy pace, or marathon race pace, but usually easy pace. 15% would be zone four. That would really be like our threshold pace, our interval pace, our T pace, our I pace on our schedules would be the 15% of this schedule. So why would they only do 85-15 rather than 80-20 or whatever the lesser numbers are? Because they want to go faster and farther. Well, it's because they have a much greater volume total. So that 15% is actually more high intensity work than any of our other schedules, you know. It just adds up to 15%. We don't need to give them 20% on top of all of that volume. It'd be too much intensity, too great a risk for injury. So there's a look at a group zero schedule, level 6 schedule. And so that pro athletes, by the way, will build, that was about 82.5 miles. Pro athletes will build to about 140 miles in a week. So why don't I just create 140 mile schedules for all of you, so you can do your best possible, finish time? And the answer is because all of you, including our 3-hour people, most undoubtedly would be injured. And getting you to the starting line, an entire training group getting to the starting line injured really not only looks horrible, but it doesn't do any of you any service whatsoever. So we don't build you beyond, what we feel is reasonable for your group. Oh, one other thing I wanted to show, which you might find of interest on this schedule, is that you'll notice that, um, they have, here it is, AM and PM workouts on this schedule. And here's another one. Thursday, AM, PM, 50 minutes, 50 minutes. Friday, AM, PM. Sunday, AM, PM. 2 workouts a day. Saturday, you could actually break that 20 miles. If it's a pro schedule, you might break that 20 mile run into 2 runs. So maybe like 12 miles in the morning, 8 miles in the evening. This is easy pace. I'm talking any walkers, run walkers, or runners. 20 miles is really meaningless. You don't need 20 miles on a peak run, a peak long run, to do a marathon. And I keep hearing that, well, I won't be able to do my 20-mile run to peak for a marathon. My answer is, so what? It's about total volume in a season. And the one question we had before we started this recording, it is about total volume in the entire season. If you're going to miss a day and you really want to make up for that day, you could even take that 20 miler. If I was going to create a schedule for someone who had more time midweek, I would take, and I have done this, I would take that 20 miler and I would add it on to like a Wednesday and a Thursday and a Friday, 1 mile more each day, and then another 1 mile on Sunday. There are 4 days and 1 mile each day. That subtracts 4 miles from the the Saturday run. So basically, the Saturday run only needs to be 16 miles because you've just knocked off 4 miles and spread them out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Got it? So I don't recommend more than a 16-mile run at peak ever. But then again, AM, PM workouts are also more efficient for people who are doing higher volume. And I got to tell you, people who really want to have a PR, or people who really want a BQ, get a Boston qualifier or PR personal record, your fastest race ever. Those AM, PM runs, the 16 miles only at peak long run, that's where I'm seeing the PRs. That's where I'm seeing the BQs. It's not as consistent. It's not as often that I see people doing that or really reaching their highest potential on one of our schedules where you don't have AM, PM runs, where you do build to a 20-mile run on a Saturday. I'm not seeing people reach their finest, highest potential on our schedules. I'm seeing it with those AM, PM 16-mile peak runs. Why? Because you have more time for recovery. I've given people 23 miles on a Saturday before, but it looked more like 13 miles in the morning, 10 miles at night. You had time to take a break. You went home. This is what pro athletes do. They'll go home, they'll eat, they'll take a nap, they'll get a massage, whatever it is, take a shower, then go out in the early evening and run some more, right? So they're recovering between runs. They're not just kind of cannibalizing muscle tissue after a longer and longer and longer and longer period. Got it? So, if you do miss 2 days in a row and you can add a little more here and there, you don't want to take a full day and add it on top of another full day. That's probably going to be too much, right? But you can take a part of that day, like that 1 mile or 1 hour, excuse me, 10 minutes, and put 10 minutes or 1 mile onto another run or another day or another day. Got it? Um, Critical days are days where you have like threshold interval repetition. Those are faster days. You want to do that whole workout all together, even though somehow in my version it got spaced out a little more. But it really is one run all together here, one run all together here, the easy pace on all your schedules, the easy at the beginning and the end, be it runners, run walkers, or walkers. I'm talking to all of you for all of this. Um, you want to do it all together. The easy runs are warm up and cool down, and then the speed work in between. The threshold, the R pace. R pace would basically be like running around a track at about 95% of your maximum ability, your HR max, 95%. 2 minutes. That's what R pace is. Um, and then you're walking for 2 minutes for recovery. And then T pace, you're running 20 minutes. This is a peak week. 20 minutes at threshold pace. We're talking about like 10K pace. So you're really what you're going to do on like all out 1 mile pace for our pace, or really once around the track, you don't want to do 100%. And then what you can do all out for 6 miles with T pace for 20 minutes. Got it? So that's how you kind of deal with the schedules. That's where our pro schedule is different from our schedules because, pardon me, they have more time the entire week, where we don't have time the entire week. So we tend to take midweek and load it onto the weekend, onto those Saturday runs. And also, one of the things that we found so consistent is they'll do their runs with the groups in the morning. And then it's very tough to get everybody to come back out later in the day or even on your own and do the rest of that 20 miles on your own on Saturday. So, but it does have implications on things like stopping for water stations. Well, if a pro athlete is going to do a run in the morning, stop, go home, eat, take a shower, eat some protein, rebuild muscle tissue, take a nap maybe, and then go out again. Why the heck can't we stop for a few minutes at water tables? I mean, I don't know. There you have it. So the answer is stop at water tables, wait for everybody to get water. Don't rush it. Aerobic runs, which is what we do Saturdays anyways, or Sundays in Balboa Park, are all about lower heart rate to utilize fat more efficiently for fuel, ATP. Got it? So if that's our motivation, stop, get your heart rate down a little bit, wait for everybody. I always say at water tables, think of water tables like a bar. Kick back a few, tell a joke, and then move on. And that's the way to do it. Now, race day is a whole different ball of wax. We're no longer training. We're no longer training our fat burning engine. We're no longer training anything. We're racing. That's marathon race day, half marathon race day. We're going at marathon race pace the whole way. We're taking in gels. We're no, it's not training, it's a whole different ball of wax. We're not getting our heart rates too high. We're maintaining marathon race pace. We're no longer doing easy pace. We're definitely not doing threshold or faster pace unless you really want to be in trouble and hit the wall and be walking slower than our slowest walkers. But at any rate, so that is pretty much it for this lecture. I always like to end with do not look at where you are today and ask why. Look to the future and all the possibilities that lie therein and say, why not? With that, I say, I thank you all for chiming in today, and I will see you all at the finish line. Take care, everybody. And with that, I'm going to turn off our recording and I will stay on for questions and answer. And anyone at home that is watching this, thank you. And the recording is about to end. Thanks for watching the recording. Take care, everybody.